Hi, my name is Josh, and I'm a watchaholic. Welcome to Horology Insanity. What is up, my watch friends? So, check this out. Yeah, we're looking at another Zelos. Now, but hear me out on this, right? So y'all know that I am a full-on Zelos addict. I have a bunch of Zelos watches, and I like to do videos about Zelos. So this is just another one of those. But this is a particularly interesting one because it's kind of an announcement video, and even though I've got a ton of watches sitting here that I'm about to show you, I don't actually have the watch that we're talking about today. And that's because, well, it hadn't been released yet. So here's what we're looking at. We will be throwing up pictures and video that Elshin has shared with us in the Zelos Timekeepers group. And it is a new release called the Spearfish. And so with this, I want to take a look. And the real question today is, should I buy a Spearfish? And more so than that, it's probably, if y'all know my buying habits, right? It's not just a should I buy one, it's a which one should I buy? And one of the reasons why I'm starting to get a lot more particular in the watches that I buy is because, well, I have so many awesome ones in my collection. And so when we have these new releases like this, I often have many of the variants, styles, colors, etc. already in my collection, and I already enjoy them. And so then the real question is should I try to sell one of the ones I have to get one of the new ones? We also know that I did that with the Helios, and I never did sell them, and I ended up with 4 of them. So, and that's kind of why I don't know how many Zelos I have right now. I might be pushing close to 60. I don't know. I did a 4-part video series. It was my State of the Collection Zelos edition. So this was just my Zelos. You all know that I've got kind of an insane collection, hence the name of the channel. But anyway, we're not talking about that today. I want to talk about the Spearfish. So here's why I'm a little excited. It's based on one of my favorite watches, which is the Zelos Swordfish, specifically the 40mm. So if y'all know, I did a whole video on this, but it's kind of based on this. It's a refined version of this, which I like. This one is the mother of pearl dial, which is a keeper for me. I adore this. It's one of my favorite Zelos. But what he did was he kind of took this as a base for an idea, and then he made it better. And when I say made it better, well, there's several ways that he did it. So what we'll do is we'll throw up on the screen what that looks like and what Elshin said about it. Here's the gist. The number one thing is the movement. So what he's doing in this one is he's including the Joux-Perret G100 movement. And he claims that this is actually the first watch to be released with that movement. So for those that are into horological history and that kind of thing, maybe milestones and firsts, then this might be a watch you might want to pick up. For me personally, I like that it has the movement. I don't know that I care as much that it's the first release with the movement. I foresee Joux-Perret putting these movements out, and a bunch of watch companies are going to end up picking them up. And they're basically going to be alternatives to the Etta and Solita series, specifically the 2824. And that's because this is a direct drop-in replacement for the 2824. Now, as we talk about that a little bit, we got to say what that does and doesn't mean. It is not a 2824 clone. I will have some helpful links down in the description. I got one on Joux-Perret, like a history watch wiki, one from Joux-Perret itself, and it has a video. It's not in English, but it does have English subtitles, but where they're talking about this movement. And then it's a really cool one. Elshin actually shared this to the group, but it's the nakedwatchmaker.com, and it is basically a full detailed strip down deconstruction review of this movement, the G100 from LJP. And so go take a look at that and you'll kind of see how it is or is not different. Now, one of the things that I was not sure of, and I kind of want to share with you because I'm learning this, and I don't know, maybe this is common knowledge, but I thought it was cool. So it turns out Joux-Perret has been like a Swiss watchmaker for I don't even know how long now. And they make some of the best quality movements I think, out there. The first watch that I learned about Joux-Perret was when I was doing research because I was thinking about getting an Arnold & Son. And Arnold & Son, I think they were either owned by the same company or they used Joux-Perret movements or something like that. I don't know exactly how that worked, but Joux-Perret came up as their movement maker. And so I thought that was really cool. And then it turns out Elshin is using them. For example, he did the Mirage here. Let me hold this up real quick. This is the Mirage Blue Azure. But if we look at the back of it, this is really what Joux-Perret does. So Joux-Perret doesn't make watches, they make movements. And so Elshin designed this watch and had it made, but he did so by using this spectacular 8-day hand-wound Joux-Perret movement. And so I guess Elshin, since he's connected to Joux-Perret and maybe has an account with them, and he's being able to get more of their movements in. This one, the new Swordfish, is a Joux-Perret, but it's more of an affordable one, right? If you look at the pricing on the Mirage, they're not cheap. And so I think that this new Swordfish, he's got it priced at I think $649. For the base models, the Forged Carbon and the Meteorite will probably be slightly more expensive. Usually the Meteorite runs about $100 more, but at $650, you're getting a great watch. Elshin has made many different versions and variants: bronze, stainless steel, titanium. He's made them in 42 millimeter. He's made them in 40 millimeter. And so it is like a Zelos staple model, I think. But anyway, with this, it's a direct drop-in, so it's not a clone of the 2824. And what I did learn was that Joux-Perret got purchased or bought out by the parent company, Citizen. And so Citizen also owns Miyota. For those who aren't familiar, I don't know, I wasn't familiar, I'm learning all this. But Miyota is another movement maker that are on a lot of micro-brand watches. And so now, I should say, I'm wearing today the Aventurine Starfighter. So this is an ETA movement, but Elshin uses a pretty broad spectrum of movement. So this is an ETA in it. He's got Salida in some of his others. He's got the Miyota series, specifically the 9000 series Miyota. He's got the Seiko NH series in a bunch of his watches. And then, of course, he's got the super fancy Joux-Perret in some of these. And so it's a wide breadth of what you can find as far as options. But even though it's a drop-in for the 2824, Elshin said it's performing better in any of his tests compared to the ETA. And it comes with a whopping 68-hour power reserve. Now, if y'all are familiar with the Mirage, it's got an 8-day power reserve. But anyway, when I see the Joux-Perret talking about 68 hours with their power reserve in this one compared to probably the 40 to 42 hours that you would get out of an ETA 2824 or any of their clones, I think that's pretty neat, especially in an automatic. We'll talk about it in another video, but the only con I found of this watch right now is that because it has an 8-day power reserve, you never have to wind it. I actually like hand-wound watches, and I like winding them. So if I'm going to say a con of these, it's that I like to wind it. But with most automatics, which is what this new G100 is, you really wouldn't be winding it anyway because you'd be wearing it. And so the 68-hour power reserve, you could set it down for a couple days, pick it back up, and it would keep on going. I think it does have a hand-wound feature, like most of them do. I'm curious if it's any better than the Salida and ETA, because the Salida and the ETA have a mechanism within them that is a little weak to hand wind. And so if you hand wind it too much, that can over time degrade and or break. Now, the Miyota 9000 series does not have that. And to the best of my knowledge, you can hand wind a Miyota 9000 movement and not have any of those problems. And so maybe because Joux-Perret is semi-linked to Miyota through Citizen owning and being their parent company, maybe this one won't. I'm curious how much these movements cost compared to the 2824, whether it's the ETA, the Salida, SW200, or like the STP clone of these. And I'm curious of the decoration and finishing on them, because Elshin made it sound like the Joux-Perrets were better decorated, more refined, hopefully because of all of that, more accurate than the ETA and other 2A24 styles. I'm curious to see what that all ends up looking like. That's the only one that I didn't see Elshin kind of answer in the comments. So what I'm going to recommend, a Facebook watch group. It's specifically called Zelos Timekeepers, and it is moderated by Elshin himself, and this is where he posts all the news. This is where all of us Zelo addicts go and hang out and talk to one another. That's kind of like the place to be for all Zelo stuff. But a lot of what I'm sharing here in the video with you is really just what he shared with us on there, but I'm going to add my spin to it, give you a couple of my thoughts, and I'm going to share some of my watches as to see what these watches might look like in person. Might you want one? I don't know. Might I want one for my collection, and how would I fit that in compared to all of these other watches that I already have? And so there are approximately 200 of each variant, and there are 6 variants. Now, he did say that a couple of them only have 100, and I don't know how he picks what gets 100 and what gets 200. I think at one time, like when he was making the salmon, so let's look at that. There's a salmon spearfish. They're calling it copper, I think. But when he made this salmon Nova, he didn't think that these were going to sell that well. And so he made a lower amount of them, which for collectors, we actually appreciate the lower amount. And so that makes this more desirable, at least from a collector's perspective. And so he did not specify in the comments, at least that I saw as the time of filming this, which ones will have a batch of 100 and which will have a batch of 200. But he said most will have 200, some will have 100. You should be able to see on the case back which ones yours do and do not have. I don't know if he'll talk about that more. I'm sure somebody will ask in the group for him to give a better breakdown. And so hopefully he might comment in and do that. So we've got 200 each. Oh, one of the cool things is it's 165 grams total weight. And so y'all know that I think the sweet spot for a lot of people is 150 grams. And he said the 165 was with all of the links. And even with my 8-inch wrist, when I wear these, I often have to take a couple of these links out because the bracelets are so big. You know, like if you have maybe upwards of a 9-inch wrist, you might even still be able to fit it. Now, don't quote me on that. If you have a 9-inch wrist and you get a watch and the bracelet doesn't fit you, email Elshin and he'll send you a couple of links. So I've had to do that on a couple of watches, and he's always cool about that. So he'll work with you on that. But I will say that the 165 grams is on the full weight with all links. So you take a couple out of that, you're going to be right at that 150 gram sweet spot. So let's talk about the variants real quick. We've got 6 to look at here. And one of the things that I want to point out is there's no blue. There's no blue, there's no teal. So I'm a little saddened by that. Now, technically, there's a Meteorite with some blue accents. We'll talk about that one in a second. But I did find it interesting. The color selections, yeah, he only went with 6. And we first got the orange. Now, the orange was first debuted in a Zelos model with the Hammerhead 3. And it sold out immediately. And so there have been... Wait, have there been more orange watches? I don't know. He just did a yellow in the Great White, which was kind of new for Zelos. That was the first yellow they offered. They offered the first red in the black tip, which I actually have. I love that watch. And so in this case, it's not the first one to have orange, but it is a good looking orange. And you'll notice that he's got like a fume pattern on it. And so it kind of gets darker and really almost solid black as you get to the outer edges of the dial, which then matches the black ceramic bezel insert. So that's pretty neat. I will say of the variants, that's one I'm interested in. I should go ahead and say too, I suspect all of these are going to look better in person than they do in their pictures. I don't know why, but I think they will. I definitely can say that of this Mirage. I mean, I don't think you could go wrong with something like this, but a lot of these, like the forged carbon, for example, and we'll be looking at that here in a minute. This forged carbon looks way better in person than I think it comes across in pictures and stuff. And so I could be wrong. I think that's going to happen with these Spearfish models. But other than the orange, I am curious about it. The next one is the green. And I noticed I don't own a green Zelos. Now I do have a green Ventus North Star, and I talk about how much I love it all the time. And in fact, my wife has come to realize or determine that green is her favorite. She doesn't wear a watch. She doesn't understand this hobby, but she helps me do this channel. And in doing this channel, she has determined green is her favorite. So if she were to pick one out of this batch, that's probably what she would pick. But yeah, I don't know. I like my green alpinist, my Seiko alpinist, but I don't know that I just love a lot of green watches. And so yeah, I probably wouldn't go for that one. The next up is sweet in my opinion, and it is forged carbon. Now I have a couple of forged carbon and I have done a couple of videos on these, but these are two swordfishes. They're both 42 millimeter. The one on the right, I don't have the bracelet on it, I was swapping straps and stuff, but this is stainless steel. This is the original one. It's got the forged carbon dial. This was the first offering that Elshin ever did with a forged carbon dial. And you'll see that it has a black ceramic bezel insert. So this is pretty cool. You can see it's got like the gold color handset on it with the vintage style lume, and this watch is amazing. Now, after he did this one, he later came out with this titanium version, and you'll see that he put a forged carbon bezel on it as well. I think this is cool. I like the combo of this. I love titanium and the light weight of it, and so I actually end up wearing this one a lot more than I do that stainless steel one back there. But the new one looks like it has both a forged carbon dial and a forged carbon bezel, so it'll be similar to this one here. However, looking at the pictures, it looks like it's going to be a little shade darker than the ones that I have, and I think it's going to be more like this great white forged carbon that I have. Now, when I say it's going to be more similar to this, I mean in the darker gray texture, almost blackish, but not quite, so a darker gray texture of the forged carbon itself. I think it's going to be like what you see here on the left in the Spearfish. Now, where the Spearfish is going to be different than both of these is in the orange second hand and in the orange accent. In that regard, we'll throw up a picture of it. I did a whole nother video on it. It's going to look like the forged carbon Timekeepers edition black tip. And so if you haven't seen that and you're curious, I would say this Spearfish is likely going to be like this darker shade of forged carbon that's seen in the great white, but with the same orange accents that you saw in the black tip. And so if you're curious about that model, merge those in your mind, and I think you're going to get an idea of what you'd be getting in the Spearfish. Now, I don't know that I'm going to pick up one of those, and the reason is because my titanium Swordfish with the forged carbon is a keeper, and it's my favorite of all these. This is going to be like the one forged carbon that I end up with when I actually get my collection organized one of these days. Now, the next one is the Frost, and the Frost is an interesting one because you'll see here that I've got a 42 millimeter stainless steel Frost dial, and if I zoom in on this real quick, it's like the same texture of the Zelos Black Sand dial, so for anybody who's seen that, but it's got a small subtle texture to it. And of course, these are all full lume dials. So if I zoom out a little bit, let me turn the lights off, and boom, you'll see a full lume dial. Now, what's cool about this is that when the lights are on, it just looks white. Like you don't notice that it's a full lume. And so I suspect that the Spearfish is going to be kind of like this. Now, the one difference though, if I put this up here, and if we can kind of zoom in on the right hand side and put the Spearfish Frost up on the right, you'll notice that the texture of the Spearfish on the dial, it's different than the Black Sand, and it's much more pronounced on the orange and green and even salmon variants in the pictures. So if you look at those, you can really see what I'm talking about. It's some kind of a textured, I don't know if it's guilloche patterning. It's kind of like the whirlpool that you have on the Makos. Let me see if I can get one of those up here. It's kind of like this. However, Elshin said that it's not curved, which we can see in the pictures. And he said it's a different dial or texture than these. He only mentioned it very briefly when somebody mentioned the texture of the Mako dial. But I suspect it'll be kind of like this, but straight. We did see some texture in the Espresso Brown Nova, and I do not think that the Spearfish is going to be as large or pronounced as the texture that you saw on the Nova. So I think it'll be kind of similar to what you see here on these Mako Whirlpool dials, but it'll be straight And you can kind of see it in the pictures. We'll zoom in on some of them. You can see the texturing pattern starting from the very center of the dial where the handset is and the post sits. And then as you go out towards the edge of the dial, you start to see, the traces of the pattern go off there. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty neat. I think overall it's an interesting texture. Of course, the forged carbon is going to have the normal forged carbon texture, and the Meteorite's going to have like a normal Meteorite texture. But, I've got a bunch of Meteorite watches, and we know that every single one of these is different. And so the way the Meteorite cuts across these line of Sky Raiders, all the dials were different. If I look at like the OG, here we go, Mako V1 with its Meteorite. Yeah, you can just see that there's different shades, different textures. They're all different. Here's a titanium swordfish with the Meteorite dial and bezel, right? And you can see that this is a lot brighter. This one's a lot lighter, more silver of a color. Anyway, they're all over the place. So lots of options there, but let's keep looking at Salmon. I did want to notice that I've got the 40 millimeter stainless steel Salmon dial. And I think that the Spearfish is going to be very similar to this, but it's definitely not going to be as pink. I think it's going to be more close to a copper shade. At least that's what it looks like in the pictures to me. And it looks like he's going to keep a little bit of the fume pattern maybe on that, like he's got on this, but it's not as dark as the orange. Now, again, we're going off of pictures. These are pictures that it looks like Elshin snapped with his phone and shared to the group. And so it's not high definition professional stuff. It's not seeing a watch in person in 4K the way that I'm sitting here trying to show you this Salmon one now. But it does give us an idea. And so the Salmon one, the Salmon/copper one, I'm curious about it as well. And so, yeah, those are the 6 variants, right? The Meteorite, we kind of talked about that one already. It's got the blue bezel. Oh, if you want to see what a blue ceramic from Zelos looks like, this is a Mako bronze, I think a V2 with the blue Meteorite, but you can see the blue ceramic bezel, pretty pronounced. I think he'll be using a similar one. He did mention that the bezels are brushed. They're not polished. They're more of a satin, and he prefers that. And so if you're looking at some of these, you will notice that they don't have a lot of the gloss, the high gloss that you would see from some other ceramic models. Christopher Ward usually puts out like a high gloss ceramic, and so you won't see that in here. Oh, you'll notice there's 2 different kinds of bezels. I'm going to be honest with you here. I don't know that I like either one of the bezels. My favorite of all the bezels is the Mako. Let me hold up this Frost again. I like this 60-minute, but I like where it has the minute indicators. Sometimes you'll see a warning track here at either 10 or 15 minutes, which these don't have, but I don't mind that either. I think that looks pretty good. And so I don't know that I love the bezels on any of these, and that's just a personal preference. Now, if you like a simpler look, and if we just look at some of these bezels real quick, there's no minute indicators. They're marked at the 5. Every other one is numeric. The other one is just a simple line dash. And some people I think are going to like that cleaner look. For me personally, I don't. Would it keep me from buying the watch? Probably not. Now, keep in mind, he did say in the comments that the 12-hour ones are bi-directional, and they are going to feel, as people say, a little mushy. And I should do some air quotes there, mushy. Also, the 60-minute bezel is going to be 120 click. The 12-hour is a 60 click bidirectional. And so just be mindful of that depending on which variant you get. And one of the things that did come up in the comments, and this is a pretty good question, the watches come as is, meaning as you see in these pictures. You cannot get the orange with a 12-hour, for example. You cannot get the Meteorite with a 60-minute. And so last one we'll close on. Let's see here. This video is way too long, but thanks for sticking with me. I hope that if you're watching this, it's probably a bunch of watch nerds and Zelos addicts, and that you actually enjoy what we're talking about here. So if you do actually like it, give me a thumbs up. That'd be cool. But the last thing I want to talk about is the bracelet. So one of the things, and Elshin explains how he refined the case and the bracelet on this new Spearfish based on the 40 millimeter Swordfish. And if this new Starfighter is an example of the way that he's taking these things into a higher level of refinement, then it's a very good thing. It's a very, very, very good thing for Zelos. Now, keep in mind, I say that knowing that the quality of all these other ones is good. But when this Starfighter, I mean, this feels like a $4,000 or $5,000 watch. It really does. The bracelet is super well refined and polished, and it's really thin. So these links measure in, for example, these links measure in at 2.5 mil. Elshin said that the Spearfish is going to measure in at 3 mil. So just slightly thicker than this. The Swordfish 40 bracelets, these are 3.5 mil. And so you see just the way that they kind of get thicker as they go up. You know, I didn't measure some of these, but this could be 3.5 millimeter, maybe 4. And so what's really interesting about that is that the bracelets feel a lot more elegant when it's like this. And the way that the watch is kind of refined, you still keep balance on wrist. And so when you're wearing it, you know, the watch doesn't necessarily feel top heavy. Now, I will say that I'm guessing this style clasp is what's going to come on the Spearfish. From what we see in the pictures, it looks like it is. This is the standard 2-button pusher. It does have the built-in micro adjust right here. Okay. But here's what I'll say. And I noticed this when I'm wearing this Starfighter. Now that he has made this watch and this bracelet so kind of sleek and, in my opinion, more elegant, the clasp feels clunky now. Now, what's funny about that is that this clasp was amazing when it came out, and it's amazing on all these other watches. This clasp on this bracelet, this is the titanium forged carbon, it fits right in. It's right at home. There's no problems with it whatsoever. However, now that he's gone so thin on this clasp, honestly, it's clunky. And this is how I would liken it. This is the Mako V1. This is a Mako V1 bracelet. And this is a really nice bracelet. The finishing on it and everything is great. This is the clasp that almost all micro brands were using back in the day. And it's what Zelos was using too. This clasp is like a brick. Now, it's really cool because it does have the 2-button pushers. You can open it up there, and it does have like built-in micro adjust, meaning you press this and it gives you like a slide extension. Okay, so you could adjust it throughout the day if your wrists swell a little bit. Of course, it's in here because it's supposed to be a diver's extension. You know, oh, you put on a wetsuit and you put it over that. I don't know. Nobody goes diving. Nobody uses watches for diving. Let's just be real. I mean, okay, so one of you is going to do that, and then you're going to tell me down in the comments, and you'll probably post pictures with your one watch going diving off the coast of Florida. But if we're honest, divers use dive computers and whatnot. They're not using these. And so really what this is for all of us when our wrists swell. If you get hot, right, you're going outside, and then all of a sudden your wrist starts swelling, and this is what you want to use that for. Okay, and so, but what happens is you put that down, and you can see it. Look at how clunky that clasp is. Well, that right there is my beef with this Starfighter, and I'll do a whole nother series of videos on this Starfighter, but that's like my only con. That's the only con that I've been able to come up with after wearing this watch now. It's this clasp, and as awesome as I love this clasp, I wanted to see it on the Swordfish 40, for example. I wanted to see it on all the other Zelos, but now that he's going thin on this, and he's going thin on the Spearfish bracelet too, be prepared. This clasp is going to feel a little clunky. So that's my opinion. Those are all of the options. Oh, I got this box in here because this should be the new box that the Spearfish are going to come in. And so y'all know, like, we've got a whole bunch of stuff in here because I got some watches packed in. But yeah, it's got 4 watch slots. It's kind of felt lined on the interior. It's got some slots for you to put them down. They should be coming in this. Now, again, man, this video has lots of pros and cons. This box looks cool. But if you have OCD about metal touching your watches and you don't like metal touching metal, like I don't set this down like this, right? I don't like metal touching metal. You can't put this on top of the watch box because it's going to scratch up the side of your case. So you're going to end up having to, this is what I've been doing, put down a watch thing, then you can set that on there. That's how I get past my OCD, and that's how I kind of save my watches from getting dinged up. But just so y'all know, this is the box that the Spearfish should be coming in. It should be coming in with this new kit. He did not mention if it will be coming with any other straps. So historically, he's used tropic rubber, maybe some leather. It comes on a bracelet, of course, we saw that in the pictures, but I don't know if it'll come with any others, but it should come with this box. So that's it. It's a long video, but the Spearfish is cool. I'm not sure which one I'm going to get. I'm curious, which one are you going to get, or which one are you eyeing? If I had to just pick gut reaction, initial reaction, oh man, probably that orange. And the main reason I would pick the orange is because I don't have an orange dial watch. But I have a lot of the other ones. I've got a ton of Meteorite. I've got a ton of Forged Carbon. Those would otherwise be my two top picks. The Salmon one, but I've got, the Salmon Nova, and I've got the Salmon Swordfish 40, and I like those. So yeah, I think orange would be my pick. But anyway, what would you pick? Down in the comments, let me know what you think overall. And do you like the option of having like what otherwise is a base model watch, but with a really sweet engine, with this really nice Joux-Perret movement? I think Elshin might start doing that with a couple of other models. We'll see, but I'm curious. Anyway, until we talk again, my friends, please remember what really matters, and that's not watches. Keep the insanity sane.